Lovely. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And thank you everybody who is joining us. First thing on the agenda is to review the agenda. The few things that are on here that bear noting, in particular, the field force policy final review, based on our discussions over the last few months, as well as a conversation surrounding the Citizens Police Academy, and a pepper ball review. So those are the three main topics. We have a couple of folks who will be joining us, one has already joined us, to be policy experts on that. So can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Dallas. You're muted, but I saw your hand. Do I get a second?
Second.
Thanks, Bonnie. Everybody in favor say aye. Aye, or raise your hand.
Aye.
Lovely. It looks like that's unanimous. Anybody opposed? It is indeed unanimous. Thank you, everybody. So starting off, we have a new CRB liaison. We'll kick it right off to you, Michael, if you would like to introduce yourself. And then we'll go around and each give our public or our comments and introduce ourselves. If you're in the if you're in chat waiting, if you want to give public testimony, go ahead and raise your hand now. We'll get to you in a few minutes, but as you come in, just raise your hand. Michael?
Sure. I'm sorry, I was filling out a form. What was I supposed to do?
Just introduce yourself, say hi to everybody, and welcome.
Yeah, so my name is Michael James Garcia. I am the new Lindsay, the new Civilian Review Board representative and or liaison to the commission, and happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
You're Lindsay light until you prove yourself, Michael.
Well, lovely. So let's jump into liaison reports then. Let's start with you, Silver, and then Amanda for what's going on in the ad hoc and then the Human Rights Commission.
So thank you. And as far as the ad hoc committee is concerned, we've made some movement as far as getting some policies that we are putting forward to the city council. Some of that process has been slow going, but we're finally kind of getting the wheels turning. So that's been good. We've done a lot of work with the Community Oversight Subcommittee, but not so much on a lot of the other subcommittees. So that is very worrisome for a number of us. And I know that I've spoken with a number of people that are concerned about that subcommittee being taking kind of precedence over a lot of the other work that needed to be looked at and done. We've been asked to add 2 more meetings so that we'll go through till the end of April. And as I understand it, that's going to take place. That's it. That's as far as I can report out.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Silver. Amanda?
All right. So I don't have as many things this time as I had last time, but we are recruiting some new HRC members. So that is open and through tomorrow, I believe. So we have 3 slots open, and we're hoping that, we'll get those filled soon. We're working on a couple of events. We did a film series around International Human Rights Day, and that went really well. So we're looking at doing a couple more of those as we're over Zoom. And it's interesting, before COVID, we tried to do some film series, and I think we're having more success after. So people may be bored enough to come. But we're working on those. And we also are, one of our work groups, our homelessness and poverty work group, is working on campaign to promote awareness around reporting of hate and bias crimes against unhoused community members. So we're working on that. And then we're also working on a resolution supporting the changes that are being proposed to the 13th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. So that is what we have going on.
Excellent. I did have one question about hate and bias crimes. As far as I understand it, socioeconomic status and houseless status are not legally protected categories. Is that accurate? And do you have any solutions for that you're looking at?
They are not legally protected, I don't think. But it is something that the Office of Human Rights and Neighborhood Involvement collects and tracks. And then I believe, I'm probably going to say this wrong, this happened right before I came in as chair, but I believe there's been some work to make that a protected status, which then could have an impact there. But solutions, no, I don't. I think we're, working through some of that, but I don't have any right now.
Yeah, I imagine that's something that the Police Commission will also need to take a look at as the complications of enforcement prop up afterwards. So that might be something for our next work plan as well. Going on to our next agenda item. So I see some hands in the comments for public comment. If anybody else is still interested, we're going to start with Andre Royal. If you are there, yep. Sorry, I'm trying to promote you to a panelist real quick. I don't think I've got the ability. Jeremy?
Sean, I allowed him to speak. I will, when I did that, it shifted him, so I didn't realize you wanted to make him a panelist. I will shift him to a panelist now.
That is fine. I was just concerned because I was pushing buttons and nothing was happening. So
Okay,
we've got...
I promoted him to panelist.
Lovely. Andre, do we have you here? We got a mic after you.
I hear you. I see you. Do you hear me?
Hear you.
All right. Can you see me okay?
We cannot see. Oh, there we go. We can see you as well.
Yeah. All right. Let me
Yeah,
know
60
when and I'll 60 seconds. All right. Well, I want to. Okay. March 14th, 2021 at Alton Baker Park, we have the Suddenly Sleepy Sleepwalk. We want to invite the community to come out and show support for rare disease like narcolepsy awareness and sleep disorders, and the importance of the benefit to the community as a whole. We'll be meeting at Shelter 1 for a 5K race. Come out and show your support. All communities welcome. Service members, everybody, uniform, the whole community. I can be reached at suddenlysleepy.org. If you guys have any questions.
Sweet, you got another 30 seconds.
Oh yeah, 10 o'clock. It's during the time change, so everyone's losing a little bit of sleep. So it's a good time to talk about the importance of sleep in general. I'm on my coffee now, so I hope to see some of you guys there.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Jeremy?
I just wanted to mention that regarding Mr. Royale, Team Rager was made available to members of the Police Commission. So Janina Rager works for Eugene Police Department, and she's invited the Police Commission to join her in using Team Rager for the discount to get involved if anybody on the Police Commission would like to. So
Lovely. Thank you, Jeremy.
Right.
Thank you, Andre. And with that, we'll go to the next public comment with Mike McFarlane.
Thank you, Sean. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, we can see you as well.
Hey, I suffer from a sleep disorder, and I just wanted to pop in and support the cause that Andre is representing in his race. I think Chief Skinner and a few of the officers in the group can probably look around to the people they're dealing with on the street. this is a COVID thing. This is something we're going to be dealing with in a big way in the next year or so. It's just everybody is not quite mentally right, but sleeping is something that's affecting all of us. It transcends race. It transcends, really pretty much everything. So I appreciate the police officers who come out and support this. Thank you all for what you do.
Thank you so much, Mike. And with that, we will move on to commissioner comment. Unless I see any other hands popping up in the chat, which I'm not seeing. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Andre, for joining us. And let's start commissioner comments with V and then Jennifer.
Okay, I just want to say welcome, Michael, to the Police Commission. And also, it's good to see everyone. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thanks, V. Jennifer, and then Dallas.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, me too. Just thanks, Michael. And I don't have anything important to add at this time, but glad to be here.
Thanks, Jennifer. Dallas, and then Bonnie.
Yes, I will go on record to welcome Michael to the Police Commission. And second, I need to find out if there's any objection or how I'll go about this. I work on the Real Men Wear Pink for the American Cancer Society, and typically each year, I represent, Brenner's Furniture, where I work, and I'm on a team of 12 to sometimes 15 men, and we raise money for Lane County, raising money for American Cancer Society. So my question is, the police chief last year, we did some involvement and stepped up to the plate. They did a commercial and so forth. But as far as marketing, as far as looking, I'm a commissioner now. So my question is this: can I represent the police commission doing the exact same thing that I do? There's no involvement on your case other than it'll be tagged when I'm in material. Then not only am I representing the furniture store, I'm representing the Eugene Police Commission. That's my question.
To jump in before the next public comment, we would have to vote on it as a commission, but yeah, that's something we could do. Traditionally, it's the chair's responsibility to represent the commission at various functions, but if you have a personal connection with any group, really, if anyone does, I am more than happy to, I would like to connect with them as well, but I'm more than happy to take a back seat in that role as representative and have the person who's there be the primary.
But Dallas, you can also say you are a Eugene Police Commissioner, not representing the commission, but if you...
Yeah.
Either way, I mean, that's something that needs to be voted on. How do we do that?
When you want to do it, you make a motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that Commissioner Boggs represents the Police Commission, raising awareness for American Cancer Society.
Second. I don't think I can second as chair. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Jennifer. Everybody in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Universal. Dallas, thank you so much for representing us in such a vital group.
Thank you.
Bonnie and then Alan.
Hi. Last time we met, I had a motion that I wanted to pass, and I realized that it's actually not a motion, and I'm still working on the issue. So that's my update for that matter on homelessness and such. So I need more time. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan and then Silver.
Yeah, I'd like to also welcome Michael to the Police Commission. Get ready to do policy, Michael. You do have some big shoes to fill in Lindsay's. I also wanted for anybody that's listening or for all the commissioners that know people that were thinking about applying to the boards and commissions that Maisie said, I think it's the deadline's tomorrow at 5 o'clock. So if you know of anybody that was thinking of it and they hadn't got their application in, tell them, make sure they do. And then finally, right before this, I was watching the president talk about COVID, and he said that not only are they going to make 100 million shots in 60 days, not 100, he said everybody will be eligible for, everybody that's eligible will be able to get a shot by May 1st, which is really encouraging news that we're gearing up that fast. So amazing what happens when you have some competency and leadership.
Thanks, Alan. Silver and then Michael.
So last I heard, the hate crime that took place in North Eugene is not being determined to be a hate crime. Is that still the case? There was a noose found hanging from a trash can, and the N-word was spray painted on a car. And the last news that I heard was that that was not being defined as a hate crime.
There were 2 incidents we had in North Eugene, Silver. One was a county jurisdiction. The spray painting of the car and the noose, I believe, are a sheriff's office jurisdiction. That's their responsibility to investigate. The second one, which was the graffiti, is not being classified technically. So the hate crime designation is either bias crime in the first degree or bias crime in the second degree. And bias crime in the second degree specifically articulates that if one person tampers with the property of another based on that person's perceived, the suspect's or the victim's perceived race, sexual orientation, all the protected classes, that's a bias crime in the second degree. Since this particular graffiti was pasted on just a building, you can't make the connection that it was done so because it was inconveniencing the owner of that property based on their race or ethnicity.
Okay, so that wasn't the incident that I was thinking about. From what I heard, the vehicle was sprayed and there was a noose found at that same.
Yeah, that's the county jurisdiction, and so I don't have any information on that, so I can't speak to that because it happened in the county. It's not a City of Eugene investigation.
Okay. That really upsets me to know that it's not going to be determined to be a hate crime if that's the case.
I can certainly reach across the boundary and just get an update on that and find out what's happening if that would be helpful for you. But I wish I had more information, but since they're the ones taking the lead on it, I don't get regular updates on those that don't happen within the city limits.
Okay. The reason I bring it up is there are a number of us that are doing a lot of work, and it's sometimes such a drain on our own personal lives. It's emotionally draining for us to know that we're doing this work to try to make the community a better place, and then to have something like that take place and then to not have it go through the system as it should be properly channeled is just it's like a gut punch. And I know that, for the work that I've done and for the sort of time and effort that I've put into this ad hoc committee and just all the other different things, venues, and I'm not saying this for myself, I'm saying this because that shows me that the system doesn't work for BIPOC people. If we've had it set up so that something like that could be classified as a hate crime and it doesn't get determined as to be a hate crime, it just makes me step back and say, why am I doing this work?
Yeah, this is the first that I've heard that it wouldn't be approached as at least being bias crime in the second degree, which is the tampering of property of another based on their perceived race. And that's exactly what's happened here in my mind, based on the limited knowledge I have. The interesting piece is that I do think that I will take your lead on this and do a little bit of digging, because even though it happened in the county, think about the profound impact it's had on so many of our Eugene citizens that are in and around that area that have to see that, not to mention the victim. crime. And so I think I will, now that this is the first I've heard of it, I think I will take the initiative and reach out and figure out what's going on. And then what I'll do is through Jeremy or through, I'll just shoot out an email and just let you know what the follow-up is on that.
Yeah, thank you, please.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you, Silver. Thank you, Chief. Let's do Michael and then Amanda.
So I'm new, so thank you all for the welcomes, and I will just leave it at that.
Thanks, Michael.
Sorry, Alan, if that doesn't live up to Lindsay's reputation.
Oh man, she used to go on for hours, man.
Amanda and then myself.
All right, so happy to be here. Welcome, Michael. Nice to see you. I just wanted to clarify that when I was talking about reporting of hate and bias crimes against unhoused, I meant reporting to the Office of HR&I. So, but sometimes folks don't realize that that's something HR&I tracks. They think that they track what folks more traditionally think of as hate crimes. So sorry, that was not clear. And then I did, just to piggyback on what Silver said, I don't know if this is related, but one of the news stations put out a piece where they spoke about the two incidents on River Road, which this is my neighborhood. So I was watching that pretty closely, and they kind of conflated the two incidences and then said, this one is no longer going to be considered a hate crime. And I had a handful of people ask me about if I saw the article, and when you really read into the fine print, it sounded more like the one that was the graffiti that was under EPD jurisdiction was not, but that the one under sheriff that had, like you mentioned, the graffiti in the news, that still was being. But the article, it was very confusing. So that could be part of what's happening, but I still think probably totally worth looking into. But I ran into that too with a couple of folks just like, what's going on? So that's all I have for comments.
Thanks, Amanda. I saw the same confusing article as well. To spend a second on that, I think it also points to the impracticality and difficulty of the various polka dot districts we have in various places. Downtown, we have different rules in different places. We have the polka dot district up in the River Road area of jurisdictions, which causes all sorts of problems. And minimizing those problems because of the ways in which they damage the credibility, not just of EPD, but of the county and the efficacy of both as well, is something I'm very interested in discussing more and tackling. Not quite sure how to do it yet, but I plan on proposing it on the work plan and figuring it out. So we'll see if we're successful and if folks agree with me on that, because there's a few problems inherent in that. I'd also like to draw attention to the police, EPD's continued involvement in a variety of community projects, like the cancer awareness that Dallas spoke of, like the Suddenly Sleepy Sleepwalk, and give major props to Chief for both the formal and informal support of these community endeavors. I think it's very important, and I'm glad to see it remain robust. And with that, thank you. And with that, we can move on to the Chief's report if you are good to go.
You know me, I'm always good to go. I always have plenty to talk about. So Silver, that request has been sent out to Special Investigations Unit to reach across over to the Sheriff's Office and get some clarity on that. So we're happy to do that. Yeah, we're happy to do that. I think that's an important piece. And Amanda, you're absolutely right. There was just those two incidents happened so closely to each other and with two separate jurisdictions, as there was a little bit of confusion with the media release. And I will say that we as an organization swung and missed on our media release by even though technically it's not a bias crime as the statute points out, we missed an opportunity to make a strong statement about not tolerating that kind of behavior, regardless of whether it neatly fits within the Oregon revised statutes or not. And so one of the things that we're doing to rectify that is we're getting some different eyes on some of the press releases that might have some racial overtones to it, especially around racial hate and bias incidents and/or crimes, to make sure that we don't miss that opportunity again, because that's one of the important pieces of what we need to do as an organization. Is every single time, Silver, you talk about the tough work that you're doing, and sometimes you wonder if you're making any headway. Well, as heavy as a lift as that is for you, because you live and have experiences that I'll never experience, based on obvious things between the two of us, it doesn't mean that you should be in that fight alone. And so the police department, it's really important for the police department to make sure that we take opportunities to make strong statements when we can. So that's an acknowledgement on my behalf as a leader of the organization, and a very quick description of kind of the remedy that I think that we're going to put in place to make sure that we don't miss that opportunity again. So yeah, police department's been busy. We've been struggling with, not struggling, we've been challenged with a lot of things that are happening concurrently right now. And I think one of the biggest challenges that this police department has right now is a sense of feeling like we're kind of in this place, we're a waiting place, or feeling stuck. When you have a bunch of type A individuals that want to get going, they constantly want to know what the mission and the vision and the direction is of the organization. And I've tried to grab the reins a little bit with this organization, so that we don't get out ahead of some of the work that's being done, not only at the ad hoc committee level, but also city council as they get a chance to review those recommendations. There's some things that have been on my mind. There's some things that I think others have identified as far as being able to make some meaningful change in the way we do business and the way we can be more equitable in the way we do policing in Eugene. And some of those really, really important things we have executed fairly quickly, but we're kind of in this waiting place. And so while I really am looking forward to seeing the ad hoc report, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that I was a little bit disappointed that it got moved yet another month down the road, because you have a police department that's really, really looking forward to using that as kind of the work plan for strategic planning as we move into the future for this next year. And so that's one thing that just is on my mind. And listening to you talk about the ad hoc just reminded me of kind of feeling a little bit stuck around that. We're also in the midst of, sorry, that's my dog in the background. In the midst of dealing with and trying to identify CSI stuff. Hold on just a second, 2 seconds.
While we are waiting for Chief to return, I just saw Macy join us. If you would like to contribute to the liaison report from the ad hoc committee, or if you'd like to give public comment, you'll have a chance. I guess we'll continue with Chief's report and then get right to you.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Maisie.
Hi, everyone.
So we're doing the CSI stuff, workshops we're doing. We've got a survey that's out right now on the city's website, and we're hoping to hear from a lot of individuals as it pertains to how we envision that money being spent. And I think some of the questions are well crafted to help us better understand kind of the spirit of what people are trying to accomplish. And then what I'm hoping will happen from that is really, really engage the many areas of the CSI that have to do that work to come up with those creative solutions on how we can get to yes on some of those things. And so that's another piece that we're waiting to look for. And we are expecting kind of our first report of our quarterly collection next month in April to see how well that's performing. We have over 75% of businesses that have auto enrolled into the payroll tax. Most of the rest that haven't are many of those are self-employed individuals or individuals that are just going to they're not going to electronically pay or file. They're going to do that kind of the old-fashioned way. So we're waiting to kind of see what that looks like. So looking forward to to getting some clarity around that and building a community safety system with our partners and homeless services, prevention services, fire, municipal court, all of those pieces of the system that are so important to us and being able to do that. So that's happening at the same time. And then the last thing I guess maybe not last thing, but the other thing I would say is concurrently to that is I'm heavily involved at the state level, testifying at the legislature about a variety of police reform bills that are on the minds of legislators up there. We're tracking over 300 police bills. Not everything's going to make it, through committee, but we're seeing how that's going to pan out. It's a long session right now, so it goes till June, is my understanding. It's a 180-day session, and so it goes till June. And so it'll be interesting to see how those line up at the state level and how our ad hoc recommendations line up, and hopefully there won't be any conflict there. But we're waiting to see kind of what happens at the state level that ends up being a legislative mandate that comes down. And then the last thing I guess I would leave you with is, you may have seen that I've been appointed by the governor to the Board on Public Safety Standards and Training. That is the executive board that advises the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, which is the certification department for police, fire, dispatch, all of those things. But I will specifically be looking at police issues, being able to influence policy, influence training, influence reform, and making some decisions about revoking certification of officers after they've gone through the disciplinary process. And so I'll be spending my time up in Salem as well, trying to be a good representative of this area on behalf of the Oregon Association Chiefs of Police. So just felt strongly that if we're gonna profess that we are heavily involved in wanting to be reforming my chosen profession, then I wanted to put myself in a position that I not only could affect the local service delivery model, but also the statewide delivery model for agencies across the state. So that is all I have, you guys. And any questions you may have, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, so I got one from Michael, I've got one from Bonnie, and then I got one from myself as well. Oh, and then Dallas. Sorry, Dallas.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you, Chief Skinner. So the 300 bills or over 300 bills, I was wondering if you have an idea if those are those all bills that would affect local police departments, or is that sort of 300 bills related to law enforcement very broadly?
Yeah, it's 300 related to law enforcement broadly. Everything from revisions to law all the way through police reform, all the way to affecting 911 dispatch centers. So when I say 300, we're looking at it's kind of, as a profession, there's 300 that we're tracking down.
And if we have more questions on the legislative side of this, Senator Manning is scheduled to join us in April. He might be able to answer some of those as well. Bonnie?
I was just reading an article by Oregon Live that was talking about the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police. And it was saying that it was opposed to a database that would talk about the discipline of officers and such. And I know that we've talked about this here in the commission, and I was just wondering, since you're representing them in a way in the public, what was that you just said? Public safety and training.
Mm-hmm.
You're representing them there. Do you also represent them in their stance on the database?
Yeah, so we're involved in all those conversations. So we've, as an association, we generally take, and again, you think about the wide variety of association as statewide. And so there are certain things that we don't necessarily all agree on. And so it's kind of a majority vote type thing. And so there's three different ways we do this. We either support, oppose, or we remain neutral or watch on something. So if it's something that we oppose, that's the broader body has chosen to oppose that. One of the pieces that if I have the bill correctly, because I don't have it in front of me, but if I have the bill correctly, one of the things that we feel is problematic with that is we've always been an association that has been supportive of a statewide database that catalogs discipline when it rises to the level of discipline, like economic sanction, termination, days off, those kinds of things. This particular bill, I think, opens the door for us to have to report discipline, even down to documented counseling and just general counseling and coaching that we would do. And so we start to think about kind of the administrative effort that it would take to be able to feed a database every single time we have a sergeant that coaches or counsels somebody or writes a documented counseling or one of those things, if I've seen the most recent version. So I would say that that OACP would not be opposed to a repository for discipline if we could identify a definition for discipline that rose to a level that we thought was of public interest. I don't think the public generally cares whether or not I counseled a police officer over running a stop sign. I think what the public cares about is police misconduct and the types of discipline that results in police misconduct.
Sorry, can you give me that example again? You don't think that the public cares if you counseled a person about a traffic stop, or what'd you say?
So we get complaints all the time. Well, not all the time. We get complaints sometimes that saw a police officer not come to a complete stop at a stop sign.
Okay.
Which we've all done. Let's be honest, we've all done that. And we in some cases will discipline that police officer for that. Under this bill, the way it was originally written is that we would have to report that to the central repository, that every time we do low level coaching and counseling or low level quasi discipline with like a documented counseling, that we would have to report that. And so we think that administratively, that seems a little bit outside of the spirit of what we're trying to do here. And but if an officer was engaged in conduct that resulted in significant discipline, demotion, days off, obviously termination, suspension, any of those things that we would, I think, happily want to make sure that the DPSST knows about that, and that we would have that there, because the whole point of this is that we don't want to, we want to be better about making sure that bad cops don't just get passed from one agency to another, that they leave an agency and go to another. So we want to be able to know all of those things.
I think the unfortunate part, though, is that, and we've discussed this before, is that it's the punishment or whatever recourse is taken to teach an officer something is usually based off of precedent. And then because it's based off of precedent, it could be something that maybe we see as the public needs a more discipline. And I think that I'd like to know, oh, this officer only got this like a little bit of counseling and that's it for this behavior.
Yeah, I need to step in here because this is a absolutely huge discussion that we don't have time for here, because you're absolutely right. We've been discussing this, and it sounds, from the temperature of the group, that this is going to go on our next work plan. But we need to move on to other questions.
Thank you.
For tonight. Sorry, Bonnie. Dallas, and then I saw Silver's hand as well.
Chief, one of the things I just want to make sure we're all on the same thought process is, can you kind of touch on the effects of overtime when it deals with the emotional, physical, like family time of your police officers?
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. It's so funny that you brought that up. Is that we just had a overtime analysis done in our department as a way to look at where we're at in our budget and being a little bit more mindful of our expenditures around overtime. And this year's been a big year for us, as you can imagine, with the protests and being able to manage those or have resources available for those. One of the pillars, what I would say is one of the pillars of 21st century policing that is often forgotten about in any process is officer wellness, and the need to make sure that if you want a just and reliable and legitimate police department that's making really good decisions, it's important to understand that those human beings make mistakes sometimes and are more apt to make mistakes and more apt to not have empathy or lose empathy for people when they're exhausted, tired, stressed, traumatized, those types of things. Our dispatchers are a great example of that. Think about how our dispatchers, with the astronomical amount of overtime that they have to work just to do minimums, sit in a chair for 10 hours a day and listen to people's grief and trauma. That can be overwhelming for a staff member. So it's not just about our police officers, it's about our dispatchers. It's about all of our staff that's kind of leaning in during these times. And so as the chief, it's important for me to try and pay attention to that. We have internal resources like peer support response team that can come alongside people. We have EAP that people avail themselves of. We try to promote activities for physical and emotional and mental wellness. But your point is well taken in the sense that the harder we work individuals, the more apt those individuals are going to underperform based on our community standards. And so that pillar of officer wellness is really, really important.
Thank you. Silver?
So the question I have is, I know we've often discussed this, and the reason why we're always told that we can't have the verbiage of banning chokeholds is because it's something that's done at the statewide level. And so I want to ask, in your new position, is there going to be an opportunity for us to have some more conversations around prohibiting the use of any chokehold?
That's an interesting question. I think the sticking point is going to be, and what it feels like it's going to be based on the conversations I'm having, is in a life or death situation, if that was the only, if that was your last opportunity to save yourself as a police officer, would you want that prohibited? And I think that's the piece that's really some are struggling with. When we're in an urban setting here, it's very different, because if we're in a fight for our lives, generally speaking, help is on the way within minutes. Having worked in a rural county, I know that's not the case statewide. There are deputies that are working in counties that their closest help is an hour away and could be in a fight for their lives. And so when you think about saying thou shalt not use a chokehold under any circumstances, I think that's going to be a really tough one, to get to yes on. I think what we can do, though, and I think what the direction we're going is, we're not going to make it an approved technique, which means we're not going to train on it, and we're not going to have it in our kind of force option continuum. But like many other things that may be at our disposal in a fight for your life, it potentially could show up. And so I think the thou shalt never use kind of language, or the banning or the prohibiting language is going to be tough. So trying to get to yes a different way around the language might be I'm thinking is how we're gonna end up.
I would also, thank you so much for being willing to shed some light on what's going on at these state level agencies. We remain Eugene's police commission, and stepping outside of that lane, like if we wanted to give testimony in front of the legislation, or in front of legislation, we can make a motion or resolution to give that testimony if they're stopping us from doing something we want to do at the local level. But if we go beyond that and start discussing stuff that's outside of stuff we can actually affect, we'll be here for a while, spinning our wheels on making proposals that we cannot get implemented. So hopefully we can set the standard that moves the whole state forward, rather than getting mired in what's going on at the state level. Thank you, Chief, for your report. I had a question once upon a time, but I've forgotten it. So let's move on to Macy, if you want to give commissioner comment before we move on to the field force policy discussion.
Yeah. Excuse me. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. I don't have anything to add on to the liaison report at all, and I hope that everyone is doing well and taking care of their mental health.
Thanks, Macy. Excellent. So let us pull up the Field Force Policy 318 final review. One of the sticking points between this and the Pepperball discussion is going to be the CS gas policy, which will be coming up. It's been removed, and we will, especially because the ad hoc committee has been pushed out further, we will likely be asked to approve a policy on CS gas before we hear back from the ad hoc committee. And in light of that, I want to say that any policy that we approve is a policy that can come back, especially if there's flaws that are revealed in it. It's something we can bring back. So having that baseline for our officers and for our community is important, even if things aren't quite perfect yet. So that's my caveat on a discussion I know will be coming up soon, even if it's not today. I'll probably bring it up again. But for now, is this, we got policy 318. Ryan, do you want to highlight some of the important changes that you've made from our last conversation?
Yeah, I went back through the minutes and the video from the last one and took everybody's information, all the suggestions, and just made those changes. So I'm just hoping that it fits what everybody was looking for, and if not, then let's have a chat about it.
I read through it before the meeting. I liked what I saw, but I've been known to miss stuff before. Does anybody else have comments or questions? Or can I get, oh, Bonnie, and then Amanda.
I was just wondering, so I don't know if we addressed it, and I don't see it being addressed here, but it says under A1, what does it say? Any combination of sworn personnel. I think we started addressing like sworn personnel as being like one collective group, but shouldn't it also say trained personnel? Like there.
In order to be sworn, you have to be trained.
Well, is everybody trained for like this kind of situation?
For Field Force specifically?
Yeah, because I don't know, but it seems like it should say that.
So we have ongoing training all the time. There's training in the academy. I mean, I can't tell you how often that training happens. I don't have that schedule, but there is ongoing training for Field Force, and we do practical exercises as well as classrooms, instruction on that too. So typically you're always going to have somebody who's been trained. Now, the one thing that we've run into is in certain situations is this doesn't happen a lot. So we have some of the newer officers who haven't had a lot of like experience in an actual Field Force. So that could be the case there. But Chief, do you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, ideally you have a Field Force team, like, Oregon State Police has an MRT team, and they have like a specialty team that they do all this training, and then they do all of this work. And we're not afforded the luxury of having enough resources to have a dedicated team that has like specific Field Force training. So we cross-train everybody in some level of Field Force training in the event that we have something happen. And the good news is we're not very good at it because that means it doesn't happen very often, with the exception of this last year. But I see your point, Bonnie, with respect to it feeling like it's kind of an ad hoc group, or should be kind of a specially trained ad hoc group that's doing this work.
So yeah, separate train, because I just kind of was getting the feeling like, could I don't know, some random person from the office be like pulled in to do it? I don't know. Okay, so it kind of sounds like it's kind of implied that mostly everybody is cross-trained, so they do have the experience, or excuse me, the ability to, like know all the symbols and all that. Okay, which it doesn't seem like it's too hard, but maybe it is. I don't know.
Excellent. So I got Amanda, and then Macy, and then Michael.
Okay. Well, I sort of have two questions. I have a question and I guess a comment. My question is, actually, it's not a well-formed question. I'm going to wait on that. my comment would just be that I think there's a lot of really good things in this policy. I think, like I mentioned before, Human Rights Commission is sort of waiting to see what ad hoc recommends around the use of chemical irritants and projectiles. And our resolution specifically asked for the ban of using chemical irritants or projectiles for crowd control against protesters. So in this policy, I think it says crowd control. So I am taking that to include against protesters. So HRC's recommendation would be to remove the use of chemical irritants or projectiles for the use of crowd control for protesters, against protesters. So that was my comment. And I know I've talked about this like so many times. So that's sort of where we're at on it. And, you know, we came up with that recommendation back in June based on recommendations from ACLU and a few of the what's what I'm looking for? Racial justice groups, and then also other human rights groups have also recommended that. And that's based on some public health concerns, some First Amendment, you know, concerns, and then also public safety. So but, you know, I just want to let you all know that's where Human Rights Commission stands on that.
Thanks, Amanda. Macy, and then Michael, and then myself.
Hello, I actually have two cool questions relating to this policy. The first question I had is under section 318.1, and it's under A, and it's section 5.4. I just want to know what does when feasible mean? When the officer has to have identifying information on their equipment. And the other question I had is under section, I believe, 4B, and it talks about vulnerable persons. And how do you know if a person is vulnerable based on physicality, because vulnerabilities aren't often seen? And then what do you do with the vulnerable person?
To answer the first question, because we talked a little bit about this last time, adding the when feasible is because when you're deploying to an incident where field force might be necessary, the chief and the team often have the foresight to know that something might be coming up soon. So it's feasible for them to, you know, check everybody individually, which is what we're asking here. Whereas if it's happening already, the way we saw on May 29th, the time it would take to have a supervisor check every individual that's being deployed when there's potential loss of property and hopefully not lives in future incidents, is why when feasible gives them a little bit of wiggle room. The first sentence is that they will do it. So that is something that the CRB will still be able to say, you didn't do it, so you're in trouble. the supervisors will check is just an extra added layer of, concern, at least on my part, that officers might go into the field not realizing, to be generous, not realizing that their stuff isn't visible. Does that answer your question, Macy, on that one?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Of course. And on the second one, I think we'll need to bunt that to Ryan, though I know identifying vulnerabilities is something that we've brought up before.
Yeah, I mean, that came from, correct me if I'm wrong, Bonnie, I may be, but I think that was language that you had asked for in that last meeting. We were talking about children, and there was some discussion as how that verbiage might look, and we kind of landed on the vulnerable people. Now, again, just like you said, Sean, it's going to have to be something that you've observed or something that you know or have knowledge of to be able to know if that is a vulnerable person. But it was along those lines of like kids, people who you could clearly tell had some vulnerability, and we just didn't want to use it in those cases.
It was actually Chantel.
Ah, thank you. Sorry.
And Macy as well. So I think the answer there, Macy, is we don't really have a great answer for that other than to have medical personnel standing by.
Well, and that was the whole point of this question, because people who are vulnerable, those can be visible or invisible. And so I think that there needs to be another way to assess whether a person is vulnerable or not. Because again, you cannot assume a person isn't vulnerable, especially in these types of situations. And so I guess I'm just looking for another way, instead of judging on physicality, if a person is vulnerable or not.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I don't think we have good answers right now. So I want to make sure Michael gets a chance to ask his questions, then Bonnie, and then Ellen, then Bonnie is the order I saw the hands in.
Thank you. Let me see if I can figure out how to lower my hand. I can't figure out how to lower my hand. I've been teaching on Zoom for like a year, and you think I would know how it works, but I do not. So, excuse me. I had a question. This is sort of follows maybe on Bonnie's about the composition of the people participating in field force operations. And so this comes out of something that came up on the Civilian Review Board earlier late last year, which had to do with folks who were members of other agencies and were participating. And so I'm wondering, are there particular, or at that point we're relying on other agencies to round up field force? Are we pretty much like we just need bodies on the ground, or are there specific policies around who and how they should be incorporated, right? If we've got, we're saying that the folks who are from EPD who are involved in field force operations should be, we know that they're trained, we know that they have at least a certain amount of and a certain kind of training. Are there particular stipulations about how and when folks from other agencies are included?
So this might be a question for, I think we lost, oh no, there's Chief. This might be a question for Chief, but if I remember your answer from last time correctly, outside agencies tend to help with the other things going on in the city, and big incidents are relegated to the most accountable officers available.
Yeah, one of the things that you've heard me say throughout this year is we want Eugene Police taking care of Eugene community. with the exception of May 29th, where we were overwhelmed and Springfield had to help, which is exactly what you're talking about, Michael, where it's just, we just need help. And I don't care if you're in your pajamas, we just need help. That happened. But since then, if we knew of something that was happening that we were preparing for, what we would do is prepare our staff to handle it to the extent that we could, even if it meant pulling people off the road, and then we would backfill handling calls for service with the county or Springfield, priority calls for service, the county or Springfield, so that we could be the ones that are doing the field force. So the May 29th was a little bit of an aberration. Not saying it couldn't happen again, but it's a little bit of an aberration. And since that time, we've managed or have been involved in witnessing over 100 different protests since that time. It's been the only instance where we've had to call in somebody else to do that. So in the event that we had a situation that we knew was going to be outside of our ability to control, and so the numbers were just going to be so large, but even then, I'll point to that. I'll point to the rally that happened at the federal courthouse that went to Alton Baker Park. There was 7,500 and 9,000 people there. And that was foreseen, but we managed that because we had a good sense that we knew how to manage that and keep that largely peaceful. In the event that we think something's going to be completely off the rails and we have to call somebody else in, what we do is we bring them in and we put them under our supervision with our expectations, and then we have our supervisors kind of commanding a specific group of officers, and so they are under our control for the most part, and they would mostly adhere to everything that we have going on if it's a planned event. So,
thanks, Chief.
Thank you. And I had a second little question that was following up, probably on Macy's. Wondering about the question of using chemical agents, and so it just struck me, particularly with this new point about the vulnerable persons. I'm wondering if, and I should know the answer to this because I've been on the CRB for a year and a half, but I don't know the answer because it fortunately hasn't come up there. Does EPD have specific policy guidelines for interactions involving pregnant women?
Mm-hmm. Pregnant people now. Yeah.
Pregnant people. So that's a yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we reviewed it 2 months ago.
All right. Do you know where in the policy manual it is?
I don't know offhand. Jeremy, can we get that and send it maybe in an email after? Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you. Alan and then myself.
Yeah. Aren't we going to have a separate policy on use of tear gas completely?
Yes.
Is that the 803 policy?
Yeah, that's what I was saying at the beginning, where we plan on separating it out, but I don't want to leave this in limbo while we wait for the ad hoc committee to get back to us. And approving something that is less than perfect to offer guidance is better than offering.
Yeah, because some of the things we eliminated are some of the directions of how to use this stuff, and that's going to be a complicated policy, I can imagine. And is this something that in the end we would say use of the chemical weapons as per policy 803 and then leave it at that in this policy, so people would go over there and look at how to use it? Because we took out some of the specifics, like wait a minute before, and warning and all that kind of stuff, and then to Maisie's point, this same issue, not to be used on vulnerable persons. Well, this is crowd control. So if there's 100 people and you're trying to control them, and there's one vulnerable person in the middle of it, how could you possibly know that? And does that mean that you wouldn't deploy tear gas? Or I mean, how would that work? And I mean, should not is not in every circumstance is that going to be applied. So this part of the policy gives me a little pause.
Yeah, my comments also on that. I don't like Macy's. I don't think there's clear-cut answers on this question. But for my own comment and question specifically on that, so I have MS. I have an invisible disability that if we limit the use of CS gas based on anything other than externalities that can be seen, we effectively prohibit the use of CS gas completely.
Right.
Which, you know, then we're looking at billy clubs again. Then we're looking at impact weapons again. And the reason we have moved away from those is because ideally these are better and less harmful than blunt force trauma. The way it's worded in there, like I've said before, is often to give the CRB the tools they need to judge individual instances. So it doesn't address Macy's point at all, but Alan, it does address yours in that should not allows the CRB to say, well, in this instance, it's obvious that this was broken. And in this other instance, it's not so obvious. So we can't really, throw the book at the officers. And in this other instance, it's not obvious at all. So we shouldn't discipline them at all for something they had no way of knowing.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into a conversation about what the tear gas policy is because we're going to do that later. Is this going to be kind of like a placeholder until that policy gets there? Is that the intent?
I think, yes, that's my intent. Ryan, do you have more strategic intent?
Yeah, no, I mean, like we've talked about before, I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out. And so we'll hold this. And Alan, to your point, I mean, what I want to do is just the same as we do on all the policies is I'll reference whatever that new tear gas policy is as it relates to field force. So that when somebody gets to that section, then they'll have to go back over to the tear gas policy and see what that looks like too. So,
yeah,
but it's just not there yet. It seems
right.
A little backwards, and I get that, but we're just not quite there yet.
Right. We can only do one at a time. Okay. And finally, I'd just like to thank the chief for the visual of a bunch of cops being called out in their pajamas, showing up at the scene.
Yeah, so do we have any more comments or questions or concerns about this policy? I would add daycare to I'd add daycare to the list of hospitals and daycares. But other than that, Dallas?
It's not, the main thing I want to make sure, and this is what I think about when I hear some of the things that we've been talking about right now, is when we're talking about taking things away or don't do this because a pregnant person is there, or any of the things where we're saying we're taking things away, I want to make sure that we're hearing why things are being used in the first place and the other story. Because what's happening is that I've been around, I've seen everything has two sides. So if we're hearing one side talking about, well, take away this and take away this and don't do this and don't do this and don't do this. Well, if you've been doing these things, at minimum, even if we take it away, I need to hear the other side. Do you see what I'm saying? I can't just hear, we're going to stop doing this and stop doing this. And then the answer is, let's vote on it, and it's yes. Is it as clear cut as that? Because I don't think so.
Yeah. Do you have a specific thing or a specific change?
Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, what I'm saying is that when we brought up the pregnant, you said you couldn't do something if one person out of say 1,000 was a certain way. How in the world would the police know about that one? That's to me, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, to Alan's point, I think that's one of the reasons it's super complicated. So it sounds to me like as the policy is currently written, there's nothing specific that you would change. You're just worried about the changes that Alan was also concerned about.
Correct.
Okay. Excellent. Well,
and then hold on, make sure.
Yeah.
Because there is no such thing as a flawless police department. Let's start with that.
Yeah.
If we're looking for perfection, you ain't going to get it. You're not going to get perfection. You can always find that, and regardless what the deal is. So if we're looking for a magical, flawless something, that's Shangri-La, is not Eugene, Oregon, and it's not the police here either. In looking at these things, I want to make sure we're always getting two sides of the story, and then at least we're getting a clear picture. Not just change things and take things out, basically handcuffing the police. That's where I'm focusing on.
Excellent. So it sounds like we do have some, as a group, we do have some, very legitimate concerns about the implementation of these. Do we have any concerns about what's actually being allowed and permitted? And do we have any better ideas for changes to make? Otherwise, I will accept a motion to accept it as it is, or if we have more feedback, we should give it. Bonnie?
Just one thing. When we start talking about CS again, you know how Jeremy, you will send out like this, this policy, for example, with other things. Can you also send this one out again? Because essentially, like in some respects, this is sort of going to change when we work with CS.
Yeah.
It's nice to just like have both of them so we like remember.
So if within your mailing, as you receive them, sometimes you have to scan down to get through, because I send you a lot of material when I send it to you. But as Sergeant Nelson updates the policies and they go out through the Office of Professional Standards, I create a subsection in there for those policies. So you guys just can click on them and see the changes. That way you can see the work after you've completed it. You're already receiving it. Yeah, just sometimes you got to scan down a little farther.
Okay, so when we work with CS, you're saying that this will also be included in it then?
So
I mean, this is the
policy.
The field force, for example.
The field force policy.
Okay.
Yeah, although you've seen it now, I will include it then also after he adjusts it and it gets released to the department, if that's what you're asking.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
I
Happy to help.
saw Amanda's hand.
Yeah, so Daz, I don't know if you were speaking specifically to some of the things that I was talking about, but I was going to say that so going back a while, before we talked about doing ad hoc committee, HRC had been reviewing pepper ball policy, in regard to the resolution that we passed, and then we were focusing on doing like a literature review and review of different reports that have come out about use of chemical irritants and use of projectiles, and then other options that different departments have explored and determined. And then we were also looking at the court cases from the ACLU around this topic, and what's come out of those, and then what departments have done differently afterwards. But then the ad hoc committee came along, and so we put all of that on hold after the ad hoc committee did their process and their review of all of this, because it felt like it was sort of I can't think of the right word, but futile maybe for us to be doing that work while we knew ad hoc was looking at these things and taking such a deep dive into them, and also doing such a big, broad, like comprehensive, there's a lot of different community members involved, all of that. And we were just a small group of like 4 of us doing this. So we really felt like it was more appropriate to put that on hold and see what ad hoc came up with. Meanwhile, however, we have our resolution we passed, which I am, as the representative of Human Rights Commission, I have to represent what what we vote on, what we agree to. So that's why I keep, going back to that. And ad hoc has not finished their process yet. So that's what I have to go on. And I also don't have those broader pieces that we had been working on months ago. So it sort of puts Human Rights Commission in this kind of limbo place, I guess maybe is the word I'm looking for. We're sort of in limbo with these things. So I have to keep harping on the things that we've actually agreed to and voted on. But I don't have all the other pieces that we were also planning on working on, and I won't until after ad hoc committee is done, and then Human Rights Commission decides what we're going to do going forward.
Excellent. To that point about ad hoc, Silver, do you have any idea if there will be substantive changes coming or recommendations coming from the ad hoc committee on this policy?
So what specifically, what gas?
I mean,
gas?
I assume there's going to be some on gas, but on the rest of it either.
We haven't looked at anything like that yet.
Okay.
So no.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. That is the police commission's role to review these policies. But like Amanda was saying, trying not to step on toes as we do these reviews. With it being extended, I don't like the idea of leaving our officers with the old policy, which is what will happen if we can't approve a new policy.
What's likely to happen is the legislature is going to do something with this, significantly do something with this. And so as a reminder, we can be, as a city, we can be more restrictive in our policy, but we can't be more lenient. And so I'm not suggesting we wait for the legislature to do what they're going to do, but just as a case of awareness as we talk about this is that the legislature is going to be a part of this conversation because they are going to set some framework around gas and gas munitions and when it can and can't be used. And you've already seen kind of the tipping of their hand in that situation where for mere crowd control, that's probably not going to be used unless a riot is declared where it's articulable riotous behavior with several warnings to allow for people to vacate the area. I think you're going to see some language around that, and maybe it'll even be more restrictive than that. But I just bring that up as yet another piece. You got the ad hoc in this space, you got this police commission in this space, you got the HRC that's trying to inform on this, and you have the state legislature. We got 4 different bodies that all have an opinion on which direction we should go with this, and it's going to be really tough to stick the landing on this, knowing that we've got it coming from so many different angles.
So I had Bonnie and I have Amanda, and we really need to move on.
Really briefly, this is not an answer. For the whole vulnerable people thing, but Macy had mentioned or asked, what do you do when you have vulnerable people? And I feel like maybe that is something that we can address at some point in the future, or just like there should be some kind of action when you have a vulnerable person and they've been exposed to CS gas, which apparently makes you vomit. Just actually how to handle that situation, how to differentiate, like, do you arrest this person or do you like try to bring them down? Why would you bring down a person that is vulnerable? Like maybe they have mental issues, or maybe they have multiple sclerosis, or maybe like me, they are in physical therapy and you can't really tell that they're limping, but they are, sort of. Anyway, so just a kind of like an actual kind of direction as to how to address those people when you do find out, because maybe you did spray them or whatever, but now you're also finding out that they have this, or they're telling you, I have this. So what is the action that you take? Do you take them to the side because it's not actually said anywhere? Like, do you arrest them because maybe they couldn't have exited, so you shouldn't arrest them because they couldn't have exited? So maybe we should just have something that directly says move them to the side or help them out of the way or something, but like don't step on their toes or whatever. Okay.
Amanda?
I just had a really quick comment in response to what the chief had just said, is that for the HRC resolution, it only says banning crowd control weapons against protesters. It does not say anything about rioters. So I think, so I only bring that up because I think that is potentially a point of, common ground maybe. So.
Excellent. So, do we want to approve all or part of this, maybe everything before section 318.5, everything before the chemical irritants? Or do we want to move on and leave it as it was before?
With as many questions as we've had regarding this policy, I don't feel comfortable moving forward with any of it.
Okay, that will leave us where the policy was before.
Correct.
Okay, the policy, okay.
Wait, sorry, but some of it does make sense.
A lot of it's better than it was before, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, and that's what you're getting at. Can we just take a moment, like, so that we can have a moment to see what you were saying? So you were saying after which point, can we just like read for just a second?
So last time we talked about 3.1 or 318.1 through 318.4. We added the chemical irritants because the ad hoc got delayed, and we tried to Ryan added these parts and tried to make some good changes because it's going to be a while before we get that feedback from the ad hoc committee.
Page 1 to 3?
You might not get it.
Yeah, you're not going to get, I don't think the ad hoc committee is going to get to that level of detail.
We probably won't get to that point.
Right.
I agree. Alan?
I'll make an alternative suggestion that what if we said we approve this policy with the understanding that 318.5 on chemical agents will be updated when the tear gas policy is updated. And so that'll force us to revisit this. And this is better than the existing policy. I agree with that. So I'm more inclined to move forward with this and let it sit and figure out the tear gas policy and then come back to it. And so that would be the motion I would make.
All right. So I suppose, Silver, was yours a motion to leave it as it is?
I mean, I didn't even put a motion forward. I was just.
I want to follow Robert's rules, so I want to make sure you get your fair say. Before.
No, I wasn't making a motion. We can allow for the counselor to make that motion.
Okay. So with Alan's motion, we need a second.
No.
Bonnie. So the motion as it stands is to approve this with the provision that we will bring back the chemical agents as long as I'm chair, as soon as I can, once we hear back from the legislature and the ad hoc. Is that right, Alan? Or the one or the other?
I don't think the ad hoc's going to do anything with this policy, but they might. I doubt it. They don't have very much time in there, and they got a lot of things to do, and this wasn't on the list, I don't believe.
Okay.
So it's really about once we've redone the policy, or I would suggest that we don't redo our policy until the legislature acts, because that would be redundant. So, or maybe we would do something and then it would completely redone. So once we are done with our tear gas policy, that we update this policy so that they're consistent. So it's an automatic updating kind of thing.
All right.
That's my motion.
All right. And we got Bonnie's second. Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, or raise your hand.
Of what? Sorry.
Everybody in favor of accepting this policy as it stands with the provision that once the legislature weighs in, we will re-examine and make consistent the section 318.5.
Not necessarily the legislature, but our policy.
Yes.
Once we review our policy, which should be after the legislature, then we'll update this policy too.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a question real quick before that. Is that because the legislature supersedes whatever we do?
Yeah, they can put more restrictions in place, and based on things that they might allow elsewhere, we might have more options for what we can further restrict.
And also, you don't want to do a policy that would then get overruled by state law and then have to come back to a policy. So usually it's more efficient and effective to wait for the legislature to act and then review the policy, because then you don't have to redo it.
I saw Bonnie.
how long are we waiting? Like, when are they projected to finish?
The
And
long session ends in June, I believe.
June.
So it would be after our work plan, and we can just roll this into the work plan to ensure that even if I'm not chair, we don't lose it.
And just out of curiosity, does anybody happen to know what that legislation is called? The number?
We don't know yet. When Senator Manning is here next month, we can ask him some more questions about stuff.
I can get you the House bill number if you need me to. It's one of the ones we're tracking, and so I just need to get my database. I could find out the House bill so you can look at the language that's been proposed. But understand, proposed language is written as an LC draft, which is Legislative Council draft, which is legislators have their lawyers just draft something up as a starting point, and then it's a constant iterative process to negotiate it back and forth. So it won't be the final language, but I'm happy to get the House bill number if that would help, Bonnie.
Yes, thank you. And is that something Jeremy's going to give me?
That
is something I will give Jeremy, and Jeremy will give you. Absolutely.
It should come out in our emails. Dallas?
And I just want to make sure that here's an example that I'm talking about. When we know that Senator Manning's coming or speaking, are we going to make sure that he's prepared to know what we're going to be asking?
I mean, I think he'll expect it.
I hear you. I'll get back to you with this. So what I'm saying is that if we know that this is what we want him to address, I call it just common courtesy. He needs to be sent an email letting him know what we're looking for. So it's a productive conversation versus we're talking and we ain't got no answers.
That's an excellent point of courtesy. I would encourage anybody who has specific things that they'll be asking him to send them to me. And we will absolutely let him know of some of the things that might come up. I also know Senator Manning is excellent at hitting the fly balls, or I don't know baseball, clearly, hitting balls that come at him out of the park. So
building grounders.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm happy to facilitate that as well. I meet with James quite a bit. So if there's like a laundry list of things you want me to say, hey, this is what I think is going to be really impactful for this group to hear, I'm happy to do that on behalf of the commission.
Excellent.
That makes sense.
Cool. So is there any more discussion on the motion before us? Hearing none, everybody in favor of accepting the policy as it stands with those provisions that some things need to be re-examined. Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 So that is everybody in favor, or everybody opposed, say nay.
No.
Okay, so that is.
Sean?
Yeah.
Was that in fact a motion?
It was by Alan.
So the motion is by Alan. Who was the second?
Bonnie.
Bonnie.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could speak to the no.
Yeah.
So it just continues to feel like the conversation that never took place in my house, mind you, but child goes to the parent, father says, can I get a bowl of ice cream? I don't know, ask your mother. Child goes to the mother, can I get a bowl of ice cream? I don't know, go ask your father. I feel like we need to take the lead on some things at some point here. So that's my piece.
Thanks, Silver. I feel your frustration on that front. Very much so. Okay, so with that motion settled, we can move on to the discussion about the Citizens Police Academy. With our time remaining, I don't know if we're going to be able to do the pepper ball policy review that we talked about before. If we don't get to it, we'll put it off till next time. But for the Citizens Police Academy, we have Captain Meisel here with us. I hope I said your name right. Do you want to give us a little background on what you're seeking from us and how we can help?
First, I just want to say how excited I am to be part of this. Our chief has led 2 other departments successfully with very robust and successful police academies, and he wants to replicate or make it better here in Eugene. And I've also got Lieutenant Charles Salisbury here with me. We're working on this and we're really excited. We have not had a police academy in the city of Eugene in almost 10 years. Our last one was in September of 2012. We had, at that time, it was about 2.5 months long, 10 weeks. There were 22 sessions ranging from 2 to 8 hours. So it had a total of about 64.5 hours of training in 18 sessions. There were 22 participants. And we're really excited about trying to take this to Citizens Academy 2.0 for Eugene. We're working on getting together a refreshed and updated schedule and program. We want to make sure that it is as interactive for the citizens so that the goal is they can learn more about how policing really works and get a feel for it, as well as we get to learn what they're seeing from the citizens' perspective. And that's invaluable. And that really helps build those bonds of trust. And so we're really excited. And I'm looking forward to hearing, your thoughts on what you would like to see with our Citizens Academy.
Excellent. Thank you, Captain. I know, Dallas, you've spoken passionately before about your desire to see a Citizens Police Academy come back to Eugene. So if it's okay with you, I'd love to begin with your thoughts on what that police academy should look like going forward. If you have any ideas for things you want to see as well.
Well, obviously, I would love to see diversity, in that academy. My first question is, how does the schedule look like? Is it something that they do on the weekends or they do it in the evenings? Because a lot of the folk that are impacted that I would love to see involved, they have jobs. So my question is, obviously they're not going to take time off or a vacation to do this type of sort. I just kind of want to know a little bit about the scheduling of it, because I believe it's an opportunity to show people, really what we do with policing.
I can speak to that just based on my experience. What we've done really successfully, because the majority of the people that are in our police academy may have jobs during the daytime and or students during the daytime, is what we've tried to do is offer evening classes. And so 2 hours in the evening, sometimes 1 day a week, sometimes 2 days a week, depending on how ambitious we want to be. And then what we would do, and what we've done in the past, we don't have to do it here, but we've done in the past, is we scheduled like 1 weekend day a month to be able to, during the daytime for a full day, to be able to do the experiential stuff, like going out and driving the emergency operations course, or being able to go out and experience the training that would happen out on the firearms range, or doing our simulator training, where you get to be in kind of decision-making simulations, and so you can experience the kind of the split-second decision-making that occurs. And so I think we can be really flexible, but we do recognize that it is a barrier to many if we're not flexible with job, work, life, school schedules, for sure.
From my so coming from an advertising background, I've done a lot of advertising for both political candidates and businesses. To Dallas's point, this goes to the budget a little bit, but advertising specifically to folks we need to see more of, I think should be a key component of achieving that.
And one thing I would say is, when we do this, we can be really thoughtful about that particular thing. One thing that I've experienced is that sometimes there's certain parts of our community that are not comfortable in certain settings. And so if we have members, people that are members of our communities of color or marginalized group, they might feel more comfortable if they go to a special session that has, you know, other people in there that are friends and family and people that they have a relationship with, as opposed to being plopped into the middle of a bunch of strangers that don't look like them, and then they don't feel emboldened to ask the tough questions. We want to create a sense of equity in the sense that they can feel comfortable saying, why do you do it this way? And that wasn't my experience when I was involved in something like that, and being able to do that. And so I think we can be really intentional around having different recruiting classes for the Citizens Academy, so that we can offer opportunities for people to pick the academy settings that are the most comfortable for them to get the kind of engagement, I think, that it's really valuable in these.
Excellent. So I saw V's hand, I saw Bonnie's hand, and I saw Jennifer's hand.
Yeah, Captain Mazzo, what happened to the program before? I mean, why was the academy discontinued? Was it due to funding issues, or was it due to a lack of community interest?
To tell you the truth, sir, I don't know. The program had not continued long before I arrived in Eugene. I've been here about 6 years now, and so it's been almost 10. So I couldn't truthfully answer that with any clarity or real knowledge.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Bonnie and then Jennifer.
How much is this program? Like, how much does it cost to do this, and how often does it happen? And how many people does it accommodate?
Well, we're working on the details of that right now, so I don't have an exact budget, but it does not incur any cost to the citizen. So it is free to them to attend. And right now we're trying to figure out the best way to get as many people through the Citizens Academy, and we're putting together a program to make the recommendation to the chief. But we don't want to have too many people at one time. We want to make sure that they can get a real experience out of it.
I think it sounds really fun. And I'm just wondering, though, although I'd like to, what is the purpose of allowing citizens to shoot guns?
Will there be weapons training involved in this, I suppose, is the first question.
It says an advertisement that you're allowed to go to the fire range and shoot stuff. So, I mean, that's what it says. I'm just wondering, like, what, because it costs money to do that, I'm sure. And I'm just like, I don't know if I don't like, some of it just seems like fun stuff to do. Like, if I was a kid, because when I was a kid, I wanted to be a police officer. It's like, that all sounds fun and I would love to do that. But I kind of feel like it might be more useful if I think efforts were put into doing like walk-alongs, where you get to talk to officers and get to know what it is that they go through, as opposed to putting them through something that kind of seems like training to be an officer. I'm just kind of like, I kind of don't feel like this is where, I don't know what the budget is, but I'm just like, I don't feel like maybe we really need to be spending money on something like this when there's something a lot cheaper, where the officers doing their work that they do, but they just happen to have somebody walking along. That's just my idea, but I also really sounds fun and I would love to do it, but you know.
I tell you what, we'll, you know, when we get to yes on this, we'll build a very comprehensive curriculum. And I think what you'll see is, I think you'll really be pleased with the holistic 360-degree perspective a citizen would be able to get of what 21st century law enforcement is. And the range day can be a variety of things. Sometimes it's just a range day of better understanding what weapons platforms we have, and kind of demystifying that, because many people make assumptions about the things that we have or don't have, or our capabilities we have or don't have. But it doesn't necessarily involve getting to shoot. As you can imagine, there's some people that would be super excited about that, and there's some others that were reticent about that. And so I totally get that. And we're not gonna, you know, it's never a situation where somebody should feel compelled to participate in anything. And it's the same thing when we do vehicle operations. Some people really, really want to see what it's like to have to drive at high speed and make those tough decisions when they're at intersections and navigating those things. And there's other people that are really nervous about that. And so they just ride along and see what it's like to have to drive code from point A to point B, because it can be so stressful. So there's just a variety of those things that we can do. But the point is that you want to build an academy that gives some level of experiential component so people can actually, not only learn, not only better understand, but actually experience to some degree the decision making that goes into contemporary law enforcement. So, but we can build it any way we think is going to be valuable for this community. It's not a one size fits all. So that's the beauty of this, is we can do whatever we want. We can build it any way we want.
I'd like to, Bonnie, part of the confusion, and this is all my fault because I did not include the caveat, the Apply Now for Citizens Police Academy flyer that's been attached is from when it last happened. So that is, that's informational. The new vision of the police academy is one of the things we're discussing now. So it's historical. It doesn't have to look the same. So if you have input on it, please continue to give it.
2009.
Yeah. So I had Jennifer, and then I had Alan, and then I have Amanda, and then V.
Thanks, Sean. I think Bonnie was really getting at an important point, which is being able to really clearly articulate what the purpose of the program is. Because I think you brought up a lot of different, there's a lot of possible purposes for this program. I could see that could affect the curriculum pretty extensively, I think, depending on really what your focus is. So I don't have that purpose for you. I think there's multiple great ways that this could be used. I could see people who were like Bonnie, who were interested in being a police officer, being like, this might be an opportunity for me to see a little bit of what it's like, right? To just get a flavor so I can decide if this is what I want to do. There could be people who are apprehensive about the purpose of police in general. There's so many different ways, and that would then affect what you wanted to do in that thing. So just being clear about that, I think, is important. And I really liked how you mentioned how, yes, it's an opportunity for the community to learn, but we're going to use it as an opportunity to learn as well. And that's great. But just keeping in mind that you need to create a pipeline for how that information is going to get from that class and from those people to then the people who make decisions and can use that information. Because if it just stays in the class and doesn't have a way to get where it needs to go, it's kind of useless. And that can happen in sometimes in these types of activities. So that's really the only feedback. I think it's a net positive if done well, and I'm really excited that you guys are willing to invest in this. I assume it will take a lot of effort and time for the officers who are in charge. So I think it shows a lot that you're willing to put that effort in.
Well, I can guarantee it will be successful because we have a chief who's already led 2 other departments with successful police academies, and he's got Lieutenant Salisbury and myself in his corner. So I can guarantee it's going to be successful.
Lovely. So I've got Alan, Amanda, and then V.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I was going to say similar thing to what Jennifer said. How and why we do this dictates what it would look like and what the curriculum be, how long it should be, when it's going to happen. If it's just for police officer wannabes, that's a completely different thing than trying to educate people in the BIPOC community or other types of folks in the community about what the police do and have a better understanding about how that work occurs. I think that dictates the design. The second point was I was on the council when we did this and stopped doing it. I don't remember exactly what happened, but that time frame, 2009, 2010, was right when we were doing, that was the recession, and there was a massive amount of budget cuts, and we cut $30 million from 2010 to 2012, 2009 to 2012, $30 million out of the general fund. And the general fund is only a part of the city, which includes the police, the fire, the library, and the parks. So my strong guess is that this got part of the chopping block, that the police couldn't afford to do this anymore because they were cutting a whole bunch of stuff, as was everybody in the city.
Amanda?
So when I saw this on the agenda, I looked, did some looking around at different literature and places that have done this and what the impact has been. And it was nice to see that in a lot of places it was really helpful for building relationships between the police and various communities. So I could see really using this as a targeted way to build those relationships with communities, especially folks who have been like historically marginalized. I totally agree with the budget thing. I know we've got a lot of things going on that are hard and need some money put at them, but I also think building community between the police department and our communities, or building communication and relationships, could also potentially save money and in the long run too. But my question was, I was curious when I saw this, I was thinking about folks in my life who I know would probably be interested in it, and then thinking about the risk for like vigilantism if they did do this. So I was just sort of curious if there's anything that goes into the curriculum, or if you've seen anything about that where it's like, yes, we're trained. This does not mean that you can now go out and citizens arrest everybody who's like pissing you off. So
yeah, that's it. I mean, what I can tell you is that, and what's interesting in my history of doing this in two completely different agencies, one was at Hillsborough, the other one was in Richland, Washington, 2 states, 2 different agencies. It's funny, it's probably not a shock to you that the average age of our participant is like 65 years old. It just has a tendency to just gravitate towards our older citizenry. And so, but I will tell you that throughout the entire program, we make sure we address it with kind of the very strong undertones that this is not a mechanism by which you should feel empowered to take the law into your own hands. That's what our job is. What this is it's a mechanism by which we can demystify what it is we do for a living. Because many people that are there either have had a negative experience and that's the only thing that has shaped their experience, and or people that have had no experience, their experiences are shaped based on the media or the television shows that they watch. And to demystify this is really important. The other thing that we do, Amanda, is this is something that you apply for, and that we do a certain amount, generally speaking, do a certain amount of checking to make sure that the right people are in there. We want to make sure that I don't have some, whack job white supremacist that's in my police academy. That type of thing we have to be careful about. We're bringing them into our building. We're bringing them into somewhat of a vulnerable situation with other citizens, and we're sharing with them trade secrets around what we do for a living. And so we want to make sure that we don't have, like for instance, one of the disqualifiers many times for a police academy is if you're a convicted felon of a certain crime. And we can have the discussion on whether we want to break that open a little bit. But there are some things that are non-starters, just so that we can keep everybody safe and people feel like it's a safe environment for them to be in.
Excellent. Thanks, Amanda. I have a V and then Michael.
Yeah, one of the things that I was going to say actually was already said by Amanda and also by the chief. But what I wanted to also say, Bonnie, is that just to give you an example of one of the programs that another department has. So just to give you an idea of what the first week looks like, you learn about police ethics, you learn about, goals and objectives of police departments in the community, you learn about 911 response, you learn about prioritization of calls, and how computer, needs to be, coding, things like that, and communication aspect, the psychology and emotion of the officers and also the victims. So there's a lot more to it than just, learning how to shoot a gun. That's just in 1 week, and you're talking about a 9 to 10 week course. So it gets into a lot of the, as Amanda had said, is about, community building, building trust between the police and the community. And there's a lot of things that, ordinary citizen do not understand about, you know, what it takes to be a police officer. And this is a chance for them to kind of get a glimpse, not an entirety, but at least a little glimpse, you know, of what it takes. But I also wanted to comment, you know, to Captain Maizo. I think that, you know, being that this is a new program that you're building from scratch, pretty much, I think, you know, you have the police commission to, you know, to test it on. If you like to, you know, maybe use this as, you know, the testing, you know, group to run it by, you know, have a dry run. I would be interested in doing this program. I don't know who else on this commission would be, but I'm sure you'll probably find a good sizable amount of people. And I would say that, you know, I hope you would consider, you know, doing this in part through Zoom and through, you know, maybe video, self-learning, you know, self-paced, self-learning type video, instructional videos, being that we're still in a pandemic, right? And then maybe, you know, have this in stages or in segments, you know, so that the latter part will be more of the experiential part, where you can then, you know, hopefully by the summer or by the time that you get to that part, you know, in the program, we will all be vaccinated, you know. But certainly, you know, things like doing walk-alongs, you know, can be done even right now, yeah, being social distancing can be maintained between the participants, you know, and the officers, because we want to keep everybody safe, you know. Yeah, so anyway, that's just my thoughts.
Thanks, V. Michael, I assume you still had a question and you just lowered your hand. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I had a question, and then I thought, well, it's been addressed, and then I thought, oh no, actually, I have another question. Well, not so much a question as a comment, that I was just thinking about how this might work. I was trying to think who would be, if this were run in a more targeted way than just a sort of broad call to the community. And I'm thinking that who would be the folks who'd be most likely to benefit, and whose participation would be most likely to benefit EPD. And so I was thinking, like, could you imagine like a class of Citizens Police Academy that's public health workers, and a class that is public transportation workers, and perhaps a class that is court employees, right? Those folks who you're likely to come into contact with through your work, and you'd like to be more familiar with what you do. That was just an idea that I had.
One of the things that I'll ask the commission to be mindful of as we build this is, when you think about trying to administer a 10-week class, at best, you're going to be able to do it twice a year. And so when you think about trying to get through the groups that you want to get through, you can easily, you know, put yourself out 10 years worth of effort to try and get to everybody. So, you know, each year we want to be as impactful as we can. And so we just need to be mindful of that financially and staff wise, and just the sheer time is most agencies do this once a year, maybe twice a year. So just put that, kind of just frame that in that context.
Excellent. Officer Naivasha, and then myself.
So this was my first time actually seeing the agenda and noticing that we were going to have something to this caliber, and I could not be any more excited for it. I think it also addresses what the community wants as far as transparency. So this is a time for when people can actually communicate with officers. And for me, I know being out on the street, sometimes I just don't have that time to actually form a relationship with somebody in like 2 hours when I really only have 10 minutes because I have to get to the next priority call. So this is just that opportunity to also create those relationships, provide more transparency on how we do things, why we do things, you know, why some officers have tack vests versus, for me, I wear an interior vest. So it's like all these little nuances that kind of come up and people are wanting to talk to me about on the streets. A lot of times I just don't have the time, but the Citizens Academy provides that opportunity to do that. A good thing also about this in comparison to ride-alongs, which I will always advocate for, and once things open back up, anybody can take me up on that offer because I always encourage ride-alongs. But with something like this, you have a bigger group. So for me, about 11 years ago or so, I was still in high school. Yes, I'm a baby. But a gal who had completed the Citizens Academy, who I trusted, and she's a family friend for a long time, she actually recommended me looking into policing. So this was something that got put into my head as a high school student by somebody who had gone to the Citizens Academy and had nothing but good things to say about it. And that's when I started researching, went to college, and then obviously here I am. So I think it's really important to have this other layer of transparency so folks can have that engagement with us and ask the questions that they may have wanted to ask on the street, but unfortunately I just didn't have the time.
Thank you. So for my own comment, I see you, V. So me and then V. So for my comment, I think it sounds to me like broadly accepted goals of the police academy overall are to increase the understanding between the community and the department about what being a police officer is. And that comes with a lot of, secondary benefits in regards to trust and legitimacy and transparency and all of that. So it sounds like we've got a pretty clear vision of the end goal, like we were talking about earlier. And there's also a lot of interest in, some of the specific questions of curricula that might be included in these. So I hope it's okay if we reach out to you again as you advance to that stage and have some more questions and feedback in that regard, because the overarching vision seems to be broadly in line. I learned a whole lot on my ride along, so I can't wait to see what more there is to learn for something like this. V, I saw your hand, and then Bonnie.
Yeah, I wanted to just address, Chief, your concern was that, time constraints and budgetary constraints would only allow the department to have, 2 separate sessions or groups for the academy. But I think, I don't know if you took into account that, maybe part of the course can be done through distant learning, or through videos. And in that case, if part of the course was done self-paced, without having an instructor there, to regulate the learning process, then I think, you might be able to squeeze in another one, right? I mean, maybe like 3 or something like that in a year.
Yeah, I think we can look at just about anything, V. I think one of the things that we've learned through this is the effect like the holiday season has on our time to be able to do this. You're pretty much shut down from November till after the first of the year just because of holidays. The summer poses some of the same issues with people being out of school and vacations and those kinds of things. But I think we can do any of that. The one thing that I would suggest, though, that I've seen as a byproduct is it always has been amazing to me, especially for the in-person stuff, is how much that group kind of coalesces and becomes kind of this cohort together. I mean, that sense of togetherness is really important, and they see each other as academy classmates almost, kind of like we do when we go to the police academy, where we make lifelong friends because they go through it together. So I always would always promote the relational aspect of being together and experiencing things together like that. But I do think, as we've seen this year, we can leverage technology to do certain things, or especially if like somebody misses a class and needs to make it up and wants to do it, that we can record things and they can do it later on to play catch up. In years past, if you missed a police citizens academy night, you kind of you missed that night. And so I think there's some creative ways we can do that. So I appreciate those thoughts.
Yeah, thanks. And then also you want to also, consider that, if you have folks who are not totally committed, they started a class, they take, they might go through 25% of the class or 10%, and then they realize that it wasn't conducive for their schedule or for their lifestyle, whatever. They may just quit. And then, then you have an empty spot, an empty, slot that could have gone to somebody who could have benefited the entire course and finish it. So yeah, I think, you know, to design the course, Captain, you know, to ensure that the early part of the course is something that, you know, you can maybe, you know, add on a few more folks just to account for those who might drop out, you know, later on. And then, you know, because that, you know, the course, part of the course might be done online or through video, you can then have more folks on there. You know, you don't have the constraint of the seats or the amount of vehicles that they can go on a ride along with. Yeah, and then that would kind of weed out the folks who are not really serious. If they don't really complete the first part of the course online, then they don't get to go on the ride-alongs or, you know, do observations and all that. Yeah, that's just, you know, another recommendation I have.
So I've got Bonnie and then Dallas and then myself on the queue. Bonnie?
Since it's a limited course, and it's, you know, it's not very much available, I'm thinking that, and again, I'm still thinking about like the budget. I'm like, how much did it cost? Because it was cut at some point because it costs money. And I'm like, there's so many things that need money. So thinking back on that, I think that it would be maybe advisable to select people that can be a voice beyond, you know, after the course is over. So when people apply for scholarships, a lot of times at the end of the scholarship, you have to like present something or say, I did this and the scholarship helped me with this, and I'm presenting something anyway. So what I'm thinking is that it would be great if at least there would be that one caveat, since it is free, but it is free to the person, but it's costing money. I still think that maybe they should be able to give back something, and that being like, hopefully or ideally, like if they're part of some group, like all the people that are in the ad hoc committee, they sound like they're like from different groups. So if some of those people were given the ability to participate in this program, then it would be great for them to be able to become eventually like voices for representing the police in some respect, or being able to answer questions for people and maybe presenting and saying, this was my experience, this is what I learned. And I think that like, I don't want to limit other people that from experiencing this, but I think that because it costs money, it should be somebody that can answer people's questions. So like if somebody has experienced something negative with the police and they happen to be a part of one of these groups, then maybe they can go to this person and say, this is what I experienced, I didn't like it, and you went to the academy, what did you feel, or what did you get from this? Is this normal? Like, was this supposed to have happened? I think that would be a better use, because it's, yeah, I think it's just a better use of it, because I'm concerned about the budget, and I'm like, also, well, you should get something back from that. And that's it. Conclusion.
Thanks, Bonnie. Dallas, and then myself, and then Alan.
Yeah, just two points. One, just almost on what Bonnie was just mentioning. We want to be careful. It might not have had anything to do with money why they didn't do it. It could have been that they could have had a police chief didn't want to do it. It has nothing to do with money. But they had the money, didn't want to do it. So I will make sure, and we don't know exactly why it didn't happen. I mean, that was a time period that, yeah, they were making cuts, but it might not have been cut just because of money. It could have been cut, they just didn't want to do it. Then the next thing, this right here has a lot of potential. And I've been here a long time, and I'm very aware, because I forced myself to be aware of the tone and the kind of with the Black community. How you sell it to a group and its benefits is so important. And the only reason I just said that is someone just brought up something about vaccinations. You're not gonna go to too many Black folk and start talking about, would you wanna join this academy? And I wanna make sure you're vaccinated before you go. Now see, right there, you're gonna lose a whole bunch of folk who might wanna do that, because I don't remember any of us having to be vaccinated to be on this commission. So what I'm saying, so the point is that you can make this thing really, really good, utilizing many of us who are on this commission to really have a very diverse whatever, but it's all about the pitch and how you sell it.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Dallas. So for my own comments, some of them are along the similar line. We talked about the goals of this being understanding and, you know, building that trust. Like Chief was saying, the in-person classes would go a long way to do that. Build camaraderie, build understanding. I don't know if online would accomplish those same goals. I do think there's an opportunity there to have, for like movie trailers or teaser trailers of stuff they might learn, and incorporate that into the website and the advertising, as well as like the makeup sessions if folks miss. But having a primarily online learning mechanism, I don't think would achieve the goals that we're trying to accomplish with the police academy in the same way. Because if folks because people often online look for ammunition rather than looking for understanding, to put it frankly. So when I don't know what order this might come at us in, but it sounds like next steps for this project will be, determining the curricula or curriculum, figuring out who to target and how to target participants. Target sounds bad in this context. How to encourage participants, and one thing I'd like to see included in this, as I think it was Bonnie talking about, these folks turning into a resource for the community and for their communities, making sure to include discussion, or at the very least, mentions of the existing channels that police accountability has, namely the Police Commission and the CRB, which is one of the things that I'm hopeful that new cadets also get a look into, is how these other bodies function. So I think that would also advance the goals that we talked about earlier, trust and understanding of the system overall. So I've got Alan, I've got Amanda, and then I've got V on the queue again.
Yeah, you managed to use target and ammunition in your thing there.
Second one was intentional.
There is a whole bunch of psychology about free, and people don't value free things as much as they value things where they have some skin in the game. So, like, for instance, a lot of people will charge a nominal fee, like 25 or 50 bucks, just to get people to psychologically commit to it. And you could do that with scholarships for people that would be a hardship for, but somehow figure out a way to get people's skin in the game makes it more valuable. So you don't end up with that person who goes halfway through and then decides, I don't want to do this anymore. It's free anyway. Point one. The other point, I think the purpose of this would be to educate folks about what the police do and how they do it, and kind of look behind the curtain, also see the other side of the coin. And in that regard, having targeted groups that we want to have go through this thing makes a lot of sense to me. And then, Chief, when you said 10 weeks, I was going, wow, that's a big commitment too. In 10 weeks, maybe there's some, if you did it shorter, you could get more people. And I think if the point is to get more people, then you don't want to do this full on, how to be a cop. You just want to get more of the basic stuff across. But you still want to have some of that fun stuff in there. Maybe those could be the Saturdays for those that want to. But that's my 2 bits.
Thanks, Alan. Amanda, and then V.
Yeah, you might have already considered this, and I don't know if it's really a question or just a statement, but sort of thinking about if you do it over Zoom or in person, and when you do it and where you do it and all of that. I mean, I'd be curious to see what you're thinking about it, or maybe make a plug for, but thinking about the ability to navigate Zoom involves a certain level of privilege. And that can exclude some of the folks that maybe you would want to come to the academy. And then I think also sort of thinking about day of the week, time of the day, is it on a bus route? Is it not on a bus route? These are the kinds of things that can really start to change the pool of folks that you have coming, and limit that to maybe folks who have a little more privilege, and excluding some folks who don't have that. So that would be something that I would just ask you, but also curious if that's something that you have taken steps on also or thought about.
Well, with the Zoom, I think that's a really great point. We're just kind of talking about some of the alternative technologies. We certainly are taking into account the hours, the time of day, locations, but these are all very important factors so that we can reach out to those communities, because I mean, that's the whole point of having a Citizens Academy, is so we can have that broad contact with folks that, like the chief was saying, either have had negative experiences or no experiences, and let them, see us from the inside, as well as, enabling us in a non-law enforcement or call counter encounter, have that contact with them so that they can share with us their experiences. So that's exactly the reason why we want to be careful and thoughtful and deliberate in how we set this up and how we, bring people into the academy.
Thank you.
V, and then myself.
Yeah, I wanna first say that I agree with Alan. I think that, when you have a value that the individual participant, holds for the enrollment into the program, I think it would, certainly hold them to completing the course, or at least, trying the very best, right? I mean, sometimes things happen in life and you just can't control it, but it certainly would weed out some of the folks who are not serious. And I agree with him that, to offset the applicants who are experiencing hardship, financial hardship, but wanted to take the course, there should be a scholarship available. But to the point of technology, utilizing technology, and Chairman Sean Shiver brought it up that, it may be hindering for some folks, but I think, given the pandemic and we don't know how long this is going to go on for, we can't hold on to this program and have it in static form until, the pandemic is over, which we don't know when, suppose, by the summer, things might, get more resolved, but there's no telling, and I think there's a Chinese saying, when the horse is dead, you got to get up and walk. You can beat it, it's not going to get up and walk. So, in this scenario, we have the pandemic and we don't know when it's going to end. So it's, we might as well look at other options. And there are a lot of universities that are teaching their courses online. And I do agree that, having been a college student a while ago, it definitely makes a difference to be able to sit in a classroom, and even if you don't want to talk and you're hiding in a corner of the room, you're still getting, that the dialogue, the conversation between the instructor and the students, and vice versa, that you don't typically get when you're doing a Zoom, because some people are timid. But still, we got to do what we got to do. You can't beat the horse when it's dead. And right now is not getting up. Right? Not yet, anyway. Yeah, anyway, that's pretty much all. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, V. So for my comment, I'd like to, the idea of scholarships and the idea of a fee for entry, I think, is possible, but, as Amanda rightly pointed out, the questions of privilege abound with something like that. Even if the union or the Chiefs Association or Retired Association are willing to cover the entirety of those fees, it's still a cause for concern, just in regards to optics, saying, hey, this course costs $100 now, apply. And that's just red tape for people who are already less likely to participate. But, you know, Alan, you're absolutely right. The psychology does back up what you're saying. I don't have an answer for this. I'm glad there are smarter heads than mine working on these problems. But I think for my preference would be free. And if there was a budgetary issue where it wasn't going to happen, then, you know, looking at those scholarships and outside opportunities might be the only way to get something good done. So that's my 2 cents on that subject.
Yeah, Sean, having skin in the game doesn't necessarily mean money. There could be some other way to do it.
Okay. As far as
quick question.
Yeah.
You're 100% with that psychology, and I've been in sales for a long time. The key is perceived value.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be of no cost to the person, but we need to come up with what that would normally cost for a person that's not paying. You know what I'm saying? It's perceived value. If you perceive that I have an opportunity to go to this $500 course, and at the end of it, I'm gonna get a certificate that's stamped and signed by the police chief, and I'm also doing a service for my community to help bridge trust building with such and such. You have a perceived value because all you're doing is saying, because money does take time.
Yeah.
No one's doing it for free. If the person's, whoever is instructing, they're on the clock. You know, they're on the clock. So it's the perceived value. So as long as a person understands the perceived value.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, maybe there could be corporate sponsorships, you know, like furniture stores.
Mm.
Correct. Or counselors.
Yeah, that's all excellent. I also, well, I hear one of our finest outside. So on that same note, the next comment I had was on ongoing participation, and I think ride-alongs, it sounds like, are an excellent way. I know when I went on a ride-along, there was no police academy, but going forward, we can double down on people who already have that look into the department and invite those folks in. So another way of creating value is like saying, like, you know, this is an exclusive class. There's only so many participants allowed every year. And, you know, going on a ride along might be the first step to get that first look in. So if folks are not concerned or not going to, you know, see it out, they'll have an idea already. I think that would also, to the chief's point earlier, allow us to look at ways in which opening this up to folks who are traditionally excluded. I don't know how those two relate, which one would have more strict requirements or more strict background checks involved with participation. I imagine the one that deals with actual people would, though, the ride-alongs being, you know, face-to-face with citizens of Eugene. I don't know if the police academy would have that. But they seem tangentially related to me. So just brainstorming here. Jennifer?
Yeah, I just wanted to back up what Dallas said. I 100% agree that it's about creating perceived value, because I think at this point we need these people more than they need us. So asking them to then pay, even if they have the money, doesn't seem like a good choice. I think we're going to have to do a lot of convincing to get the folks we really need, who are those bridges to communities, to even be willing to give up their very valuable time to do this. So then if we asked for anything else, that does not seem like a good idea to me. That's just my point. And I'd rather go with what Dallas is saying and like show them how this is, like, prove that this is valuable to them in a different way. So
V, and any last comments before we move on to the closing comments of the night?
So my question is, Captain Maizo, does the course count towards anything that if they were to, you know, want to get certified to be police officer, does it even have any, any effect as far as maybe giving them the, the edge of getting in or getting accepted, into the program? Or, is this useful in any way other than informational?
I mean, if it's somebody that is interested in becoming a police officer, to say that they took the steps and took the class when they, were younger or didn't have to, similar to the story that Navasha relayed, where it wasn't necessarily her went through, but a friend of hers, but that kind of, is a story that a candidate would tell. But this is not necessarily a recruiting tool. We have people that do recruiting, although people that go through the academy, they share their experiences, they tell their family members and friends, and that could be a way that, the community recruits for us. It doesn't give them any college credit, but it gives them something better. It gives them experience, the human experience of being able to see something from a different perspective, to interact with us, to allow us to see their story. And I think it's that human connection that really is invaluable both to us and the community. I think at the end, there's always a graduation ceremony. Again, the chief is there. We all are there applauding them and what they accomplished. Because when they start this process, they may start with a certain mindset, either a negative one or just one of not knowing anything. And then they persevere. They attend all these classes, and we acknowledge that. And we acknowledge those relationships and the effort that they did. So I think that's part of that value. And that's what I see as something so exciting that we're bringing it back.
Thank you. And one follow-up question. I know that this has nothing to do with, this program has nothing to do with the VIP program. But I'm wondering if you have a senior, person who finished the course and was, to be interested in the VIP program, would that kind of get them into the program? Or?
Well, they would have already gone through a little bit of a background check. It gives them an opportunity to see what else they might want to do as a volunteer. When I looked at the list of the last academy class that we had, there was a volunteer that we have that's a current volunteer on that list. I also saw a former police commissioner on that list. So there are people that, once they've gone through the Citizens Academy, they may choose to want to continue a relationship by serving in a different way with the police department, not just, becoming employed by the police department. But I think that it all has value. I think the more interactions of that kind, the more we pull back that curtain, the more transparency, the better.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate you coming to talk to us. I hope and I look forward to next time, assuming you're still available. Thank you so much. And thank you to the lieutenant as well. I know we didn't lean on him too much, but you're both appreciated.
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity. We're very excited about it, and I hope I'll see you guys, or some of you, on Sunday. I'll be doing the walk.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's move on to closing comments. Let's start with Jennifer and then Dallas.
I do not really have anything to add, but thanks for tonight.
Thanks, Jennifer. Dallas and then Bonnie.
I want to thank everyone for supporting me with the American Cancer Society mission that I'm on. I enjoy that. And it's for a good cause, but the competitive nature that I have, I like to get the word out. Other than that, what this Citizens Police Academy, and I know we're going to talk about it further, but that conversation that we're going to do that has refreshed me with what we're doing. That's all I need to say.
Thanks, Dallas. Bonnie and then myself.
welcome, Michael, because I didn't say that before. So welcome. And I'd really like to know how much this program is going to cost, because like earlier we were talking about how, oh, it's going to cost like a bunch of administrative costs to like track how, how officers are disciplined and how they're, counseled. And if that costs money, but then we're spending money on this, and I feel like the other one has like more people's lives in a way affected. I just feel like this has limited scope and the other one has greater scope. And I'm just like, well, then, money counts and we should know how much this costs. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie. So for my own comment, I want to echo what Dallas said of thank you so much for taking the lead on all this stuff and giving us a good name. If there's anything I can do as an individual or as chair, let me know. And yeah, we didn't manage to get to pepperball policy tonight. We'll have to bring it back for final review as well. But I'm super glad we got the conversations we did in, and thank you all for coming tonight. Alan, and then Michael.
I'll pass.
Thanks, Alan. Michael, and then V.
Sure. Just thank you all for welcoming me and for your patience with me as I get up to speed.
Thanks, Michael. V, and then Macy.
Just want to remind everyone that on Sunday we have daylight savings time, so don't forget to change your clock. Have a good night.
You had to remind me. Macy, and then Amanda.
Thanks, V, for just telling me that I'm gonna pretty much lose an hour, or yeah. Thanks so much for that. I just wanted to say that I don't have anything to add. I appreciate Chief Skinner and everyone trying to answer my questions that are very pointed, and I hope everyone has a good night.
You too.
Thanks, Macy, and thanks for asking them. Amanda, and then we're done.
My only comment is nice to see everybody, and that's it.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and every night. Well, every month. See y'all.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.